Good morning, everyone. We hope you had a restful weekend and are ready for our midterm exam following. But at any rate, this session covers the natural selection of representatives in Article 4.
Article 4, Week 7. Natural selection of reps. How is the governor to execute any legislation without representatives to broadcast the will of the people to citizens who are to follow? As ignorance of the law is not a valid defense, citizens look for the seal of the great state of Tennessee and the signature of the governor to assure themselves their actions are moral. An agreement to follow the law can't be so, if one is opposed, whereas who could oppose the cleanest air, the purest water and the freshest cuts of meat? My ethics professor explained the reward of moral behavior, as a puzzled and silenced class of undergraduates eagerly awaited his answer. Timmons said the reward of moral behavior is the benefit of moral behaviour. We said to and asked ourselves, what? Moral behavior is a good in and of itself, he continued. So, theoretically, holding a monopoly on moral behavior, the state grows, constantly increasing the standard of living. What is a whole but its parts, and how will citizens in those parts be heard but through their representatives? And how will we know the will of the people other than through this experimental government we call democracy? The Greeks are credited with having first explored democracy as we understand and attempt to practice today. So, in the fashion of the Greeks, we elect representatives to speak for us in our absence. Just as one who bricks buildings every day is more likely to be better than one who doesn't, there are professionals who speak for the people every day and others who don't. Not that one has to be a professional politician to represent others, and often it is not the case, but discipline in political science has its goals. So, registered residents elect representatives to the General Assembly.
With elections now scheduled until the end of time as we know it, the door to becoming a registered voter comes into play, as not everyone we see is eligible. We can't just allow anyone who shows up at the polls to vote, nor can we allow those who can vote to vote more than once. We must ensure an accurate account to ourselves to ensure we are fully democratic, because we believe the people are more important than any one individual, king or queen. We have to wipe out any and all existence of a monarchy and prove to be the best form of democratic government ever on the earth, and if whether or not we expand our space program. So, we have set the legal age limit at 18, whereas voters are old enough to make decisions for themselves, and theoretically, old enough to make decisions for the government. Registration where proof of residence is required is also important, because if voters have no ties to the land, how will they adhere to the government in the land? The state is for voting purposes a closed community where without residency, one has little encouragement to contribute to the state's system of taxation. Registration requires the individual allegiance necessary to maintain a state, and where else would we recruit others than from the youth of our state who will be better to train and more amicable to the laws and statutes set before they had come of age? But the will of the people yesterday is just as valid today, if not repealed. So, though not all will register at 18, they may, ought, and should.
So, the people select of themselves electors and representatives who will speak for the whole, where their unique position has unique benefits. These people who have been elected are in no way different from anyone else except for the distinction of being the e pluribus unum in the smaller micro-markets they represent. They only have to do one thing to represent others, and that is being in attendance. As a result, all representatives are exempt from arrest to and from sessions where their vote is requested. Sure, one could get elected and not report for duty. That could be because a bipartisan vote was on the floor, or they had already reviewed the issue and knew it would do more harm than good to support a position that wasn't in the best interests of their constituency. Our democracy is perhaps most precious and fragile when a vote is on the floor, and if there was ever a time to exercise law enforcement, it would be toward the health, safety, and welfare of ushering representatives to and from session. With the governor's decision paramount, he or she couldn't possibly make the best accurate decision without representatives' honest positions.
All the elected representatives together make up our General Assembly of the great state of Tennessee, where democracy can be seen in full swing. If one gets elected and isn't as politically inclined as others, their years in office could seem like swimming in the middle of the ocean. Political parties provide life rafts for drifters, but it is not impossible to present bills that pass both houses on 3 separate days and become law without one. Logical, researched and clearly explained bills usually should pass before partisan emotion-filled suggestions. It is researched and proven that blue is a cooler and more calm color than red. So if one proposes that a teenager's new sports car should be blue for those reasons, and another proposes red because their party's colors are so, surely one may win the day. But this decision must be made by voice in the General Assembly, which is why attendance is so crucial, important, and necessary.
So, registered residents elect representatives to the General Assembly. To separate ourselves as much as possible from the dangerous politics of Europe and the taxing hand of the king, we see a democracy of the people as an only retreat from the unfortunate reigns of heredity. Are we our fathers' mistakes or fortunes? Thus, every man and woman over 18 may, ought, and should register to vote for electors, because everyone that does renews the buttresses of our democracy. As we can't be expected to make every issue a decision of the people, it is the job of our representatives to attend sessions whenever statewide issues are on the table, which is always. In the General Assembly of the great state of Tennessee, all are heard through their representatives in whom trust has been placed. They have proven themselves in an election as the e pluribus unum in the community that is the closest thing to our government and as far from royalty as they could be.
That is all for this session. If you will prepare yourself for the midterm, we will begin.